Hello, Internet. Welcome to Shenanigoons, the Book of Fables. I am Angela, your DM, and we are here to put a little chaos into your Tuesday night. We are playing Dungeons and Dragons, specifically a story of some young adventurers who have found themselves trapped in a book. Not for very much longer, one might think. But this is Chapter 7, Eye of the Weretiger, where we're going to continue our training montage as our heroes go from children to actual classes for Dungeons and Dragons. So, how are you doing today, players?
Doing good.
You good?
Good. And I hope everybody at home is doing very well. We're excited to continue our adventure. But first, we want to take a little bit of a moment to acknowledge a few things that cause the show to exist. We are a part of the Nerdsmith Network. You can find out more about it at nerdsmith.org, but we are a community of creators of podcasts and live streams and other free nerdy content for you to enjoy, and this is one of those shows. So we hope if you enjoy what you're watching, you can actually support us on Patreon at patreon.com/nerdsmith. We're coming out with bonus content, things from some of our creators, some stuff that ties a little bit into our games, but mostly flights of fancy as they strike us. So we hope you check us out. We are also sponsored by some really incredible companies. Incredible people run them. Namely, we are sponsored here by Eldritch Foundry. Eldritch Foundry allows you to make your fantasy characters and print them out as miniatures, and also get digital copies, things that you can use as avatars, which you can see on our layout. You can see our glorious players have their characters there, which are actually now displaying what they actually look like now in the timeline. We didn't make children versions.
No.
And you can also get top-down digital copies, so you can use them in maps if you're doing top-down maps for more strategy combat stuff. So please check them out. Do we have the link in chat? Because we have a referral link
Eldritch
if you use
Foundry?
it. Yeah. You just do EF. Should just do it.
Yeah. Did it not show up?
Oh, I didn't have it open. I was loading it up. So if you use the link there, that's our referral link, and it'll basically tell Eldritch Foundry that we sent you. So we appreciate it if you want to use that. We are also hosted. Nerdsmith Network is also sponsored by World ANVIL. World ANVIL is an incredible online campaign management and world building site with an absolutely amazing community of just the biggest brains for doing this sort of thing that you could imagine. If you are a role player or a game master or a novelist or just somebody who likes building worlds and filling them with lots of cool ideas, you should definitely check out World Anvil. They are free to use to start, and there's some incredible features for people who decide they want to continue supporting World Anvil by becoming guild members. Guild members also help sort of craft the direction of the app, so you should definitely consider it. And right now in December is World Ember. World Ember is a special event that World Anvil runs every year where they provide prompts, and these prompts you can fill in information about your worlds, but at the same time there are prizes for articles and worlds and different prompt answers that the community votes on. So you have the chance of actually winning thousands of dollars worth of prizes from a bunch of different partners with World Anvil. So you should definitely check out World Anvil this month, because World Ember is roaring and going already. You can find some really, really cool articles. People make some really awesome stuff for World Ember. And they've also extended prompts to be all year round. So there are, even if you miss World Ember, there's still some really cool things, ways to kind of spark your imagination and fill in your worlds with fabulous things. So please check out World Anvil and light up the forge. And then Tessa has would like to talk about our final sponsor here at Nerdsmith.
Absolutely. So I have been doing a little bit of research, and I am so very, very pleased to have accidentally closed the thing I was looking at. There it is. Okay, whew. Had a moment. I had found the perfect recipe for a good gaming session. So you start with a 1/4 pound of cream cheese, 4 prunes, 4 donuts, and 4 lettuce leaves, and then you combine it, the cream cheese and the donuts together, and put it on the lettuce leaf, and then top with prunes. That's not the recipe I should be talking about.
It sounds like something from a 1950s housewife's cookbook. It should be in a Jell-O mold.
It absolutely is. It's called prune and cream cheese donut salad. But what I was trying to, what I meant was you should have Die Hard dice, a Die Hard dice tray, and a Die Hard dice roller. That's much better. That's what I was thinking of for a recipe for success. So I'm so sorry. I messed that up. I need to go back to my
thank you.
My RPG cookbook needs some work, but you can have a recipe for success and not a recipe for disaster if you go to dieharddice.com and use the coupon code nerdsmith-dec for 10% off your order. But if you order before December 20th, you will actually get 15% off of your order. And you'll be supporting Nerdsmith at the same time. So don't enjoy a prune and cream cheese donut salad. Enjoy Die Hard dice.
It sounds like some sort of screwed up cleansing your dice recipe.
Oh my god. A dice cleanse?
Rub the prunes on the dice.
Mm-hmm. Like, you kept rolling ones, here's your punishment. Prunes and cream cheese and lettuce.
Your dice. So please do. We do not, here at Nerdsmith, do not condone putting any of those ingredients on your Die Hard dice.
Yeah, please don't. On each side of the donut, place a prune that has been stuffed with cream cheese.
Okay, I mean...
That's...
to be honest, the prune and cream cheese is probably not that bad. It's like desserty, but just the lettuce part, that's definitely a hard left.
The quartering the donut, putting cream cheese inside the donut, putting the prune stuffed with cream cheese on top of the donut, and then in the lettuce leaf and eating it all together is just no. No.
I mean, just the donut, cream cheese, and prune.
This is
depending on the kind of donut could be tolerable.
This is the rest of the session, is trying to create some sort of sense out of our world that we now live in, because you've made us aware.
You know, it's the weirdest bagel and schmear I've ever heard of.
Oh my god.
No, thank you. Anyway, let's go for a palate cleanser.
You're welcome.
And try to forget this ever happened.
Big Daddy, if you go with the ghost pepper donut from Dunkin' Donuts, I bet that makes that recipe so much better. I'm so not serious at all, and Angela's gonna kill me, so I'm gonna shut up now.
No, I'm just gonna walk away. Just, ma'am, and just anyway. So, let's get cracking. So we last left our heroes, but we're gonna rewind a little bit. We followed the adventures of Paru, Harland, and Beza over the last several years, at least what seemed like years to you, of training here in the Book of Faebles, in the Queensdom. You each trained under different people you had met on your journey already, and those people had committed to helping you reach your potential as a hero. For if the Lord of Tales is to ever escape, which is possible if you're to go home, they would like you to be prepared to face him and perhaps kick his butt before he is able to try to, say, burn the book, which would very likely be the first thing he tries to do. Mm-hmm. So, we had Paru training as a druid under Her Majesty of the Vine, and more impactfully, I would say, going off on her own in a bit of independent study with the mushroom folk, the Myconids of the Fables, of the Book of Fables, who have an expansive network of communities all under the surface of the world that you know here. And so Paru made lots and lots of friends. One friend in particular, Sniffs, the tiny little stalwart pal that she had, found his own strength, both emotional and physical, as he grew and grew and grew over the years, and is now a very, very tall, beefy mushroom boy. Um, intimidatingly so. So Paro has her own muscle, basically. Now, much less concerned with protecting Sniffs, as Sniffs is with protecting her from things that would do her harm in the punchy, ouchy sort of way. And so yeah, she has been honing her craft as a druid over these last several years. Meanwhile, Beza, training with Her Majesty of the Hunt and with her knight Sir Tuskendale, was being schooled in the ways of knightliness, being a good hand-to-hand combat warrior, and also learning Her Majesty of the Hunt's runic arts. Notably, one such rune from the queen herself that allows Beza to grow to a very large size, and with that be a more powerful bastion of justice and truth and the Fable way. And Harland went on walkabout with Gura, the turtle, just meandering around, helping folk where he could, and earning himself a bit of a reputation as a sort of hero of the people. Had garnered quite the fan club of people. His name preceded him wherever he went. Also earned himself a couple of other fan clubs, including the Harlots, a few groupies that always enjoy Harland showing up, because Harland grew into quite a hunk. He grew quite into a muscular farmer's tan, deep voiced. What was he basically doing? He's doing like a foghorn leghorn sort of thing, where he's just like, "Now see here, I'm just a poor country furbolg," and his hair just in a perpetual pompadour, even when he takes his straw hat off. He's just very handsome, and the ladies anyway. Honestly, I don't think the harlots discriminate. So the folks that find him very handsome. And I don't remember what the other group was. The Harlequins. It's the Harlots and the Harlequins, two warring factions of groupie fan club that Harland has acquired here. Oh dear God, that's gonna come back to bite me, I'm sure. And also, in addition to their normal training, they also had moments of bonding with some of the other queens. You do, for the most part, stay to your training, the realms that you train in, but you're able to see each other every so often. You're bonded through your adventures here, and the fact that you were all brought here at the same time. And even though you might be distant for a while, you come back, it's always very much family reunion or like close friends. You're not so far away and distant that you don't stay in touch. And you have the opportunity to bond with some of the other queens. Paru has a bit of a deal with Her Majesty of the Trade, a Triton woman. She asked if Her Majesty could help acquire a friend she'd been missing from the library, a fire weasel. And Her Majesty seemed to imply that she could track down a book and see what she could do. And one morning, Paru awoke to a little fire ferret sleeping near her, and now has a pet fire ferret from a possibly different book world, which opens up some interesting questions about Her Majesty of the Trade. While Beza and Harland each were instructed to seek out Her Majesty of Beauty. And they traveled north past the mountains, Twilightward, and found in a beautiful, sparkling nighttime glacier, this woman, Her Majesty of Beauty, who appears as the beholder's most beautiful conception of a person, to which Harlan saw a pretty lady with coveralls with grass stains, and it immediately made me adore Harlan more. But so you both spoke to Her Majesty of Beauty, and she asked if she could draw your portraits. It was shown in the night sky, in the aurora borealis above the glacier, that Her Majesty of Beauty is actually responsible for all of the illustrations in the book you are in. And so she captured your likenesses in paint, ? And you are now somewhere in the book by that logic. She also told you that there are, for Harlan and Beza, there are pages in the book waiting for them to discover, which she said the finding was half the fun. So when you get out, if you get out, you might want to peruse the pages a little bit and see what you find. So, other than that, that's what those three were up to. We have a couple more to catch up with, rewinding further back. Oliette, you found yourself being guided unknowingly by the narrator, who was revealed to be, in fact, Her Majesty of the Word. One of the guises she takes as the keeper of the story in this book. And she seems to have taken it upon herself to train you as a young storyteller. What that means is something we'll discuss tonight, and then we'll discuss a little bit what goes on with your fifth party member, Verlaine, the Changeling, who has a different trajectory than most of you, and it'll be intriguing to discuss. So, Oliette, you spend the next however long, quite a bit of time, training under Her Majesty of the Word, and she teaches you about the idea of what a bard is, the purpose of a bard, the power of words in all their ways. She's not just a storyteller, she's also the keeper of law and of memory and history. Anything that can be written down or passed on with your voice is something that she holds some domain over. So as a bookworm, you obviously have a lot you can connect with her about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about what you think, or what you would hope your rapport with Her Majesty of the Word is. She seems like someone who is very oddly, she seems like she has sort of two minds. She is both very concerned with word choice, the letter of the law, the way that you express yourself accurately, but she is also very, very encouraging of imagination and improvisation and figuring out how to use language and stories to craft your own reality. It's unusual, and she often kind of fluctuates between the two. You find for a long time you try to figure out how to find that balance with her expectations for you. But on a more like personal level, on a one-to-one level, how do you think your rapport with her is? How do you think like your relationship with her is?
Yeah, I think especially initially, it's very much like the eager student who sits at the very front of the class and like always has the answer and is always trying to be called upon. Like very, I feel that Oliette respects her a great deal.
She has that
very
sort
much
of
wants
like
to impress her.
Yeah, she has sort of like a statuesque sort of authority. It does seem that the more you spend time with her and the more you see her interact, she is very much the sort of the head of the table when it comes to the queens. As the keeper of the story, the fact that they exist in a book, it feels like she has some sort of, maybe not managerial, but she seems to have a wider view, a wider scope than some of the other queens do.
Yeah,
So you
I
get
mean,
the sense of she's kind of the head honcho around.
right, which would only endear her to me even more. As someone
Oh yeah,
who
like
is
learning how to Could you imagine somebody who has to like keep a bunch of monarchs in line?
right, exactly. I just so desperately, I think, initially want her to be impressed by me and want her to find me worthy, I guess, of this tutelage and to prove that she chose right, I guess, by letting me hear the story and guiding me through. I think that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, she very likely does not have much of an issue with the persona that you've chosen to start adopting. If only because she understands, as I'd said, the importance of how you use language to shape your reality. And if your reality involves having people listen to you, having people uh, look to you for guidance and look to you for leadership, you're using the language of those people in order to get that done. So she doesn't really have any intrinsic moral issue with what you're doing. It seems very effective for what your goals are. She's a bit pragmatic in that way. She doesn't have any sort of like idealistic intentions for you. As someone who is ostensibly telling a fairy tale, she doesn't seem to have any illusions about their, different strokes.
Right.
You're not being molded, unlike Beza, for example, you're not being molded into some like heroic, chivalrous hero. Your job is not to be that. Your job is to be heard. And you're more than doing it over the next few years. I would even venture to say you probably gather a few more people in your clique. And we can talk about who they are, but they won't really come into play tonight. But yeah, I would say you probably have a few more, maybe 2 or 3 more girls that are in your clique. And they don't even have to be girls. But people who are, they bring something of value. I mean, how do you think she's Oliette starts thinking a little bit more transactionally in terms of like who she spends her time with, or does she have anything in mind when she's like recruiting or letting someone join?
I think initially she's probably trying to recruit or attract people who are like-minded, who favor, who lean in the ways of being like narratively minded, who value, the spoken and the written word.
You're like a Mean Girl art collective.
Kind of, but I also think that after a while, I think that this is also the first time in Oliette's life that she's really been esteemed in any way.
Sure, yeah.
This is the first time that she has a great relationship with her uncle, but he's really the only person that she's had as a support for pretty much her whole life. So to have this many people like her and want to do what she says is kind of intoxicating.
Oh yeah, hang on her every word.
Like, yeah, definitely.
Well, on that note, let's talk a little bit about how Oliette changes over the next few years from how she started. So, I mean, we saw a lot of that the last time we followed Oliette's journey, but let's do a little bit of a let's look at a little bit of a timeline of what happens here. So
Yeah.
Aliette starts as a very um she's very focused on just learning and embracing books and very helpful to other people, volunteering her time. And it almost feels a little bit like volunteering her time in like an effort to make friends. Like that's how she tries to bond with people, is
Yeah, absolutely.
giving as much as she can,
Mhm.
almost to a fault, I would say.
Yeah, I think a big priority early on too is as Beza had asked her to teach her how to read. So I think that Aliette took that very seriously,
Yeah.
and probably devoted a great deal of time, especially early on, devoted a
Sure.
great deal of time to trying to bring Beza into that and share that with
I
her.
feel like Sir Tuscandale probably wouldn't have been focusing on that so much.
Sure, but that sort of study is important for a knight to be well read and to be learned. Of course, he'd encourage it. He wouldn't have any problem with
To
it. Of
remember the
course,
first
it
3
can't
rules.
interrupt your other studies. Sure, it's one of the rules. Over the years, more rules are added and retconned and changed. You don't you get the sense maybe he's the only one that follows these rules.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's amazing. Um, so so how does let's sort of like look at that really that watershed moment for her,
Mhm.
um meeting those mean girls down in the Fey Underdark, um
Yeah.
and sort of Verlaine kind of pushing you to be like, you gotta dish out as much as you get or they're
Yeah.
not gonna respect you. So how does Oliette's perspective change? Or, and you already talked about it a little, sort of intoxicating, taking
Yeah.
on that persona.
Yeah, I think it's just like anyone who's ever gotten an acting bug, it feels sometimes empowering to pretend to be somebody else or
Sure.
to adopt personality traits that aren't inherently your own. And I think
Mhm.
as time went on, it just got a little bit too easy to slip into this persona, and it got a
Oh,
little harder every
effective.
time to drop it.
It's so effective, you know? They
Right.
listen to you.
Hmm.
Uh they yeah, why would you stop? I mean, you switch back to, you know, I feel like at a certain point, looking back at old Oliette, it's like, oh, that timid people pleaser who
Hmm.
never got attention, and
Right.
now you have all the attention. Um, so yeah, I think that's a very good approximation of all. And we're not saying everybody changed for the better. We're just,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
changed for maybe what you needed to be to be strong enough to deal with what's coming.
Yeah.
Because she's certainly strong enough to command attention.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about what she learns in her bardic studies. You can talk a little bit about like sort of what skill, and we'll sort of gloss over the heavy mechanics of it and just kind of talk about
Hmm.
it in flavor.
Okay.
What sort of skills she learns, and if there's that sort of like key, that really quintessential thing that she learns from Her Majesty of the Word.
Okay. Let's see. So I think that initially, especially, the focus is, of course, storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that probably pretty early on, um, she, with the help of the queen, is able to kind of figure out that her power lies within this ability, and that within this story that she happens to be inside of, essentially at the moment,
Yeah.
that there are old tales that she can draw inspiration from that will help her figure out what she needs to know in various situations.
Yeah.
And that if the answer isn't immediately apparent, then go to the books, go to the history, like start there.
Absolutely. Yeah, learning from the past. And the book, you get the sense, you get a better maybe not a complete picture, but you do get a better sense of the history of this world. You all heard the basic story of what happened with the Lord of Tales and the kind of place this was before. But Alia, you get maybe a little more detail than the others, and it's up to you if that's something you share with them or if that's sort of something that you just sort of, if it's not required, if they don't need to know, maybe they don't need to know. But the idea of this world has been made many times. The Lord of Tales, made it on his whim, but then remade it. He would raze it to the ground and rebuild, and that causes sort of that's kind of like a generational trauma for the beings that live here. Even if they're remade new, there's still those scars of being sort of torn apart metaphysically and brought back together in a different form. So he caused tremendous suffering in this place merely because he wanted something different. He got bored, he got dissatisfied, he was some kind of perfectionist that insisted on, no one could divine what his ideal of perfection was, but he never made it. He never felt like he achieved it.
Sure.
So there are a lot of secrets and history and spirits of past people, past beings to draw from in this place. Even if they have sort of been written out, you sort of learn how to tap into the erased history of this world. And Her Majesty the Word impresses upon you that you're the only mouthpiece they have now. That there's no one left to tell these stories other than the storytellers. Sure. So you're sort of, it's impressed upon you that you're sort of taking a charge that she also has.
Yeah. I don't think I probably share a lot of those details with the majority of the group. I do think that I would probably, especially if this is something that happens pretty early, I don't think Aliette had any issue sharing that with Beza and with Paru and even with Harland, although he may not have been nearly as interested as Beza might have been. But
that's the real interest in there.
Yeah, basically. But I do think that initially she probably would have been very open about it, but then realizing, kind of, I think that there's this false sense of importance that you can get sometimes by withholding and by acting like you have information that not everybody has. I do think probably towards the end, she wasn't nearly as forthcoming about a lot of things, probably out of fear that old Aliette would make an appearance and she wouldn't be able to put her back on the shelf.
I'm getting a vibe of like special interests of talking a lot about something that nobody else has context for. And that look of like, I don't know what you're talking about is like the worst feeling for someone like Aliette, where it's like, no, I mean, you're not only old Aliette, probably well aware of that feeling, but then new Aliette who has such a command of people's attention to then feel that again probably does not feel good and does not feel very secure. So there is a so there's that sense of probably don't need to share that. They're not going to get it anyway. It's a mix of that and like, but this is also my charge. I know these things. I'm a keeper of stories, not just a teller of stories.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, let's talk about the skill that you learn, or the ability that you learn from Her Majesty.
Sorry, would you repeat that? I'm so sorry.
Let's talk about the skill or the ability, the specific ability we'll focus on that you learned from her. We'll talk through that first experience of learning how to do that.
Yeah. Gosh, I think probably upon learning that she's able to do so, pretty quickly thereafter would have asked for a direct lesson. Like, okay, if I can do this, please walk me through exactly steps A through F of how to make
I
this
wanna
happen,
take
how to make it
notes.
happen consistently. Yeah, I want to do this perfectly every time, kind of a deal. So I
Sure.
feel like she would have directly asked for that as soon as that knowledge was imparted to her, that she was able to do that.
Of course. So, so she teaches you how to, uh, how to harness and communicate with these, spirits of the history of this book, and that part of what you need to do in order to harness that power and the gifts and the insight that those spirits can give you is that you have to tell the story of the spirits that you're being granted gifts from. So what she probably has you do, I mean, to be honest, here's what we'll paint a scene. Uh, that first time she decides to give you a lesson, she takes you to her court, so her version of the throne room, and Her Majesty of the Word, this tall elven woman with blonde hair, wearing um, a, a long dress made of all these different weaved lace patterns, a long train. It's almost bridal. And she approaches the center of the throne room, and you follow her. And as she gestures to this sort of mosaic in the center of the room that looks a little bit like a sun, the rays each point to one of the thrones. From the center of this sun, you've seen it before, this pedestal raises from the floor with this very large open book. And so Her Majesty, as the pedestal comes to a stop at the right height, she's at her full height, she's 9-10 feet tall, she opens the book, very delicately leafs through the pages. But again, that sense of she's turning the pages, but she's not looking. She knows this book intrinsically, just it's like as easy to her as breathing. She knows every word of this book. But she turns to the right page, and almost like out of respect, maybe in a sense of as part of the ritual. It's hard to tell. And she turns to a page and stops. And she looks to it, and she looks out as if she has an audience, and she orates a story. And let me see which story she tells. Okay, here's what she does. She tells the story of a dark spirit. She talks about a fiendish creature that once roamed the mountains of this land. It would hunt the innocent. It would only come out at night when it was just part of the shadows, and a great hunter was tasked with finding this dark spirit. But the story's not about the hunter. The story's about the spirit. It's from its perspective. She's telling its story. And she speaks of its this dreadful slayer of creatures, and how it was just insatiable in its need to take life and to show power over things. And she weaves this in a way that is not sympathetic to the creature, but is very much its perspective. And she tells the story almost in a tragic way, as it's sundered by a hunter, barely worthy of taking it down, and merely by chance or by some sort of minuscule luck, it manages to best this dark spirit. But the dark spirit still roams through the shadows of the mountains, and they still talk of it on the air. They warn their children at night about it, things like that. And she ends it on this very dramatic note. And as she talks about it, you feel like the room got darker, almost like shadows sort of were creeping in as she talks about it. And part of you is a little unnerved by this, but then after a little while, it feels almost safer than being in the light. You have this weird little shift in thought, and the shadow, you're almost drawn to the shadows on the edges. And as it kind of gets closer and closer and starts sort of taking over where you're standing, you feel this very comfortable, very safe chill go over you. And when she's done telling the story, the shadow subsides. It retracts back to the edges of the room, and the room is once again lit fairly bright. And Her Majesty looks at you and says, "Well, how do you feel?" And you look down at your hands and you see nothing. You look down at your feet, you see nothing. You do not seem to be visible. You're as visible as shadow in the dark. And Her Majesty explains that the stories that you tell and the stories that you bring back to life will grant you gifts in return for their resurrection, so to speak. You are bringing a life back from the dead every time you tell a lost tale. So tell their stories well, and they will reward you.
Am I stuck like this?
No.
Wait, can I undo this?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
And you just she's basically she basically just tells you any effort to harm something would take this ability away. But you honestly, but you're not really in a place to do that right now.
Sure.
So you wait, and after a moment or so, you see your hands start appearing again, and the invisibility fades. We'll say the end of your next turn.
Perfect.
So for a moment, you have this ability to be invisible when you tell this story.
This is really neat. Is it? I mean, so I know that technically you're saying I'm reviving a lost soul. Is that metaphorical? Is there actually like a soul wandering around? Should I be worried about that? Am I responsible for the soul? Does the soul see me every time I'm like walking around with my friends? Wait a minute. Can you see me when I'm walking around with my friends? Oh, sorry.
She's always very amused by the sheer number of words you can contain in yourself. But she does make sure to tell you when that's enough.
Okay.
And she tells you, you are resurrecting their memory. It is an act of respect and honor. You are not bringing forth the undead. You are merely making sure that they do not find themselves adrift outside of what is. If memory lives, no one truly dies.
That's really good. If memory lives, no one truly. Got it. Okay. Yeah, got it.
You may tell stories whenever you wish. You'd find that telling such tales in the heat of battle could have quite an impact. Some tell them as songs, some tell them as pronouncements of great warriors, and I'm sure you'll come up with an interesting way to do it.
Okay.
All artists have their own style. I would never presume to tell you yours.
Okay, yeah, I think I got it.
Good. Now, you will have, and she puts her hand on the book. When you leave this place, you will have one of your own. But I believe you'll find if you consider your tome, you will not need to find the pages of these stories. You'll just feel it, and you'll go with your gut. I think you'll find you have quite the intuition for what stories need to be told.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
And she does it a few more times. She shows you a few more stories. She, the most bombastic of them is the story of a great dragon that lit the sky with fire for 100 days and 100 nights. It was not an evil creature. It was just so enamored with its ability to create light that it wanted to share it with everyone. No one got sleep during those 100 nights. But eventually people came to appreciate what the dragon was trying to share. In the cold winter months, they would wish that the dragon was still breathing fire out into the skies. And when she finishes telling that story, you breathe fire. Just she tells you, do what comes naturally, and you just think, oh, well, maybe I can blow fire now. And just this cone of red flame scorches the stonework of the throne room.
I'm sorry.
You actually hear her laugh, which is not an unusual sound, especially later when you come to know her better. You find that she puts on, and she doesn't even put on, it's just part of her, that sort of dignity of her office can melt a little bit, especially in the evening, when one would assume her realm then sort of becomes that of bedtime stories. So she has a little softerness to she's a little softer near the evening. There's a lot of stories shared over fires between you in the evening hours, and that's where you get the sense of, and I think I have talked about this before in the last episode, but I'll reinforce it now, that you get the sense that the queens sometimes pair off into, let's call them collaborations. There are sort of blending, their domains kind of overlap in certain places. And that thing, the sort of stories around the fire, is something she shares with Her Majesty of the Folk. That is something they both share, and that's something they both connect with. But you find that maybe a lot of the queens have that. They like that little special thing they get to share together. And perhaps that's even an element of what makes this 6-part marriage work. Is that they all have something that they bring to the table. And that there are just things that are just theirs. You also get to know Her Majesty of the Vine a lot, because it does seem that the two of them are like legitimately shacked up. As opposed to political marriages. They are complicated because not only are they just unknowable fae queens, but they're also, 6 different people in a relationship of some manner. And you get the sense that they all have a different rapport with each other. Some of it's romantic, some of it's platonic, some of it's sisterly, some of it is co-worker. Some of it is just unfathomable, deep connections to some sort of magic that they both share. There's a lot of nuance to the way that the queens interact with each other. But you do get the sense that Her Majesty of the Law, or Her Majesty of the Word, may be like the head queen. Her Majesty of the Vine, she wears...
Love it.
There is one queen Her Majesty of the Word is a simp for, and it's
Fair. I mean,
that's canon. That's canon in multiple one-shots I have run. um so so yeah, that is a big element of your power, as this idea of accessing spirits and understanding how to tell their stories. That's a very large element, and Her Majesty of the Word explains to you also that, you know, often a bard requires a focus, something many arcane casters use, whether it's components that help fuel the magic of their spells through ritual or through careful study of their magical properties. There's lots of ways that components can factor into spellcasting, but oftentimes a focus is just kind of shorthand. It is a object that allows you to literally focus your energies to get the effect you want, but you don't use one when you're training with her. And when she explains all of this, it seems a little odd. And so at a certain point, old Oliette rears her head and really wants to know why. And Her Majesty of the Word explains that you currently inhabit what is destined to be your focus. That when you leave this place, you are known as a storyteller and a story keeper. That will be quite literal when you leave this place. It is a heavy burden you will bear. You must keep the book safe. And that is all of your task. But you are the one that must wield it, which is a powerful and dangerous position to find yourself. And she warns you that the king is not going to pull punches on whoever has the book if he wants it. So that casts a little bit of a shadow over what was otherwise a very interesting conversation about the fact that you're going to have a focus when you get out of here. But she does that. She tends to, you know, bury the lead a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, by the way, giant target on your back. Just putting that out there. Just don't worry about it right now. It's fine. Just
right.
You know, just be careful. So yeah, that is, I adore Her Majesty of the Word. She is intriguing, and she finds you full of great potential. So,
did she ever answer the question if she can hear everything I'm doing all the time?
Oh, eventually.
And Oliette asks this with Villain in the back of her mind and all of her girlish teenage daydreams.
Sure. You eventually ask that question slow enough that she will respond to it. Eventually. And she tells you that she is only omniscient with respect to what happens in the world, not what is in the hearts of people. She, any smarminess that you got from her, mostly came from observation. But you, as being sort of someone attuned to the idea of stories, she had a bit of a knack for kind of sensing what you were thinking. But that seems to be maybe just you and her. But she does not indicate that she can read your mind, like, overtly, like, a lot.
Okay.
You suspect as you continue studying that the worst she can do is maybe detect your surface thoughts. The most obvious things that are even written on your face. Like, it's really hard to tell when, like, I don't know if Oliette has a poker face. She might have developed one. At least
over time, but at first definitely not.
Yeah. But she doesn't seem to indicate that she's not spying on you every minute of the day.
Okay. There's no reason. I'm not asking for any.
No reason.
It doesn't matter. Never mind. It's fine.
That is a very good point, though. We've ignored the changeling in the room. So let's talk a little bit about Verlaine. Verlaine very much was just sort of like in the background. They're very kind of too cool for school, literally, um, in some cases. And you get the sense that Verlaine doesn't really have a lot of respect for authority, especially adult authority. So it's a little rough acclimating to the book for them. Not in the sense of like, oh god, I want to go home, but the idea of being put under the tutelage of someone who is literally in charge of you, that doesn't always sit well with them. And it's weird to get a sense of what everyone else kind of took to something. Like, Beza found like a nightly goal. Paru immediately connected with the mushroom people. Harland was a subject of great curiosity for Gura, and has this folk hero sort of reputation that he builds because he just gets along with people. He's just so charming, and everybody just finds his folksy charm completely. They just fall for it every time. He's just a sweetheart. And you have always connected very deeply with the idea of books and stories and knowledge. Verlaine floated for a while. They weren't quite sure what to do with him. And they weren't sure what they wanted to do. Verlaine eventually does kind of settle with Her Majesty of the Trade, which seems like an odd fit, at least initially. But you get the sense that they get some schooling in the art of the transaction and how to read people, how to get what you want. There's a little bit of that, which is worrying to some degree. But yeah, they don't seem to spend a lot of time with their queen of selection. They just kind of float around between all of you. Occasionally, like, it seems like they wander in a different way than Harland wanders. They wander in a way that seems like they're trying to figure out what they want, whereas Harland is wandering because that's what he wants. He wants to meet more people, and Verlaine seems a little adrift for a long time. I am more than happy to collaborate on this, though. What do you see, specifically Oliette, but we'll talk to everybody. What do you see your rapport with Verlaine being? It can change over time that you're here, but if you have any thoughts about what you think their relationship is like.
Gosh,
and I can fill in details too. At least what Oliette wants or tries or hopes for with Verlaine.
Honestly, I think that I don't think that the attachment or the crush or whatever you want to call it really goes away, but I do think at the beginning, especially because she's so enamored with these new challenges and tasks and opportunities, her focus probably drifts a little bit. Sure. Once she feels a little more well acclimated, she probably tries to focus more attention on them.
Sure. You get the sense that I think they're used to kind of sinking in the background.
Yeah. I think, though, that as she got more comfortable with her new persona, I do think there was probably a great part of her that was hoping that might draw them in a little closer, that perhaps if the bookworm version wasn't enough, that this new version might be. Because, to be fair, it was them that initially told me that this is what I should be doing. So I think that there was kind of this idea. Yeah, I think there was kind of this expectation that if she, and maybe that's a big reason too why she kind of fell more into this, because she thought like, okay, well then this is how I get everything that I want.
I would say that Verlaine probably still sort of snarky, but probably responded more positively to maybe not positive might be the wrong word, but you definitely got less pushback from Verlaine. And it's hard to tell if the pushback was sort of in good fun to begin with. I mean, Verlaine certainly seemed to think so, but with the sort of changes that Oliette goes through, you get a lot more of like, you guys are the cool kids at the table. It's more on even footing. They spend less time trying to like take the piss. It's more like, instead of it's like you at odds, even if it's playful, it's more like it's us versus them. That's sort of the way it shifts a little bit. Which I'm sure is probably better than how the other way felt.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely feels a little more powerful in the dynamic, although
sure.
I mean, I think that it might have taken a while, but I do think that Elaine probably tired of that pretty quickly. Whether it was because it was no longer challenging or no longer fun. I don't know if it was that they weren't in charge as much as it was just Oliette probably became less fun. A lot of that attitude probably became a little more sincere, and that's not as fun.
Oof. There will have been a point where there will be a point where she did something not because like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do when you're trying to beat this person. It's just what you wanted to do. And maybe it was a little too mean or a little too selfish, and you just got a vibe from them that might have been maybe a little too real.
Right.
And I mean, let's say that initially Verlaine hung out with you mostly, and that's maybe when they started wandering a bit more, and running into the others. And again, you undoubtedly, and I do remember this from last session, you basically have something between a talent show and like a report card review. Every so often in the Queen's Moot that would happen. Everyone would gather and you all would be gathered, and basically the queens would get to show off what you learned so far and how you're progressing. And so you would see each other during these Queen's Moots, and these Queen's Moots would take a while because there's a lot of like weird pomp and circumstance they have to go through. It actually takes like several days to do one of these things. So you kind of get like a little spring break that you get to all hang out and catch up and see how you're all doing. And so yeah, you get the sense of what everybody's been up to. So you do see each other, but yeah, Verlaine eventually kind of breaks off. Doesn't hang out as much. Eventually it just seems like, oh, they went on walkabout. Okay. And yeah, they just sort of stop coming by. And when that happens, we'll move to the others. Because I want to see what everybody else thinks their rapport with Verlaine will be. I want everyone to feel like they have their own friendship or their own sort of relationship to build with them. Let's go with Paru. So Tessa, Paru, we talked a little last week that Paru has she's got this sense of community that she's built with the Myconids. She feels like she's part of a larger thing. What did we call it? We called it the circle.
The circle, yeah.
Because it's the circle of spores.
Yeah,
literally.
Right,
so this network of all of the Myconids, a literal circle, it just gives you the sense of in the way that Oliette develops a like sort of overview, like seeing everything in a bigger picture way. You kind of do the same, but from below. You get a sense of how the world functions on this like really deep, fundamental, natural way. And eventually you find a changeling at your door, or hole to your cave, or whatever. Wherever Paru is hanging her hat. and I'm curious what you think. What kind of rapport would you like to have with Verlaine? They seem very. They've got a bit of a wanderlust to them. They're still sort of like whatever, trying to act like they don't care. At least previously what their inclinations were.
Yeah. I think Paru, being who she is and what she knows of Elaine, is pretty content to obviously welcome him in immediately. Like, yeah, come on in. We'll hang. And I think
We did talk about going to really good parties.
Yeah, I was thinking she probably
Myconid ragers.
Absolutely probably brings him in along to Myconid parties, which I'm sure are very interesting.
They're like PowerPoint presentations on acid.
Literally.
Everybody talks about what they experienced, and yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that is an opportunity for Verlaine to kind of weirdly kind of just think outside themselves for a bit.
And I think
Maybe
that's
sort of
Paru's goal, is to get them to focus outside of their own viewpoint, kind of figure out that connectivity to everything, maybe figure out how their place in the universe actually fits in, even if it's not particularly solidified. If it's not, like, even though it might be incredibly abstract, it gives them a chance to explore that wanderlust in a more mental capacity, rather than just a physical one. And absolutely crime buddies for life. So
you definitely pull some pranks.
Oh, absolutely, there are pranks.
I will say
never
one
on Sniffs, because Sniffs probably gets pissed off and tries to deck Verlaine once if there's a.
If Sniffs ever decked Verlaine,
Verlaine would
just
be
fucking down. Verlaine's at 0 HP.
Yeah, Sniffs is a big boy.
Anybody who is not part of our Discord, imagine, if you will, one of the giant fuck all mushrooms from Dark Souls that just goes woof. That's Sniffs. Please Google giant mushroom Dark Souls and witness the glory that is how Sniffs decks people. So
terrifying and amazing.
It's so good. Like, your PS4 controller will shake when Sniffs punches you. So one interesting thing that I think will happen when Verlaine is hanging out with you, Paru, is Verlaine actually kind of embraces the changeling side of them a little bit with the mushrooms, because the mushrooms are very visual when they're talking about things. They gesticulate very elaborately. They're almost mime-like in the way that they reenact things. They have in addition to the sort of psychic way that they can communicate with the spores, they also seem to have a shorthand, a sort of signing language that they use in order to communicate with each other quickly. And Verlaine finds that occasionally, when trying to express ideas that have to do with different people, that shifting into that person is sometimes the most effective way to get that across. The first time they do it, though, the mushrooms are just like they're very impressed, and for a little while it's kind of a parlor trick. But Verlaine does start like kind of using that a little bit, and it gets them a little more comfortable with that idea, because it seemed like they were just using it to like get a rise out of people before.
Yeah.
And actually seeing it as a means of communication is something new for them. So they get that sort of thing. You do get a sense from Verlaine that they still don't quite feel like they fit. This community's yours. These are your people, Paru. You understand them so intrinsically, and you're so at home with them. You've always been at home with mushrooms, and just to have people made of the thing you love most in the world, oh my god, like, just best thing ever. And and Verlaine again kind of sinks into the background a little bit. Doesn't quite feel like this is the right fit. They try, they have a good time, frickin' best ragers, and will occasionally show up after if there's a real big one going on. yeah, eventually it just seems like it's time for Verlaine to move on. And you leave on good terms. You know, it's just like, yeah, I just gotta, just gotta hit the road. It's fine. Find some more stuff. You keep doing you, short stack.
All right. You do you. And I'm always here if you need it.
And when you say you do you get there's a distinct flicker on their face that's kind of like, I'll tell you when I find out what that is.
It's okay to be searching.
And so yeah, he heads on to greener pastures. Kyle and I will discuss how he interacts with Harland. Might talk a little bit about that next week. But Beza, eventually, a changeling shows up at your door. Actually, no. A changeling screams from the field, "Stop fucking shooting me!"
Hold your fire! Hold your fire! I know this one!
And the huntsmen who have taken charge of the top of the Overlook Tower stop firing giant arrows at Verlaine.
Verlaine, are you okay?
Not remotely! And eventually you let them inside, and the Overlook Tower has become your home. It's where the other hunters live, and where Her Majesty of the Hunt holds court when she's not out roaming the countryside, when you're not out roaming the countryside. And you get a chance to kind of bond with him a little bit. He's not an outdoorsy kind of person at all. They are very much a creature of the city, and if not a creature of the city, at least they get by, and they're just not very. Let's say this: their survival skill is real shit.
Okay.
And so you spend a little time with Verlaine, and he kind of tags along on things sometimes. How do you think Beza and Verlaine get along, given that they seem to be both being led in very different directions thematically, but also both kind of people who don't know what to do with themselves, or at least didn't. You seem to have found a little purpose and are being encouraged, but Verlaine doesn't really know where to fall.
I feel like, even though he has a very different personality from Beza, that there's definitely a little bit of a like sort of camaraderie there in the whole like Beza still, even though she kind of has found something to focus on, literally was just days old when we ended up in the book, and basically is still figuring out who she is.
You both came from the island of misfit toys.
Pretty much, yeah. Like that kind of vibe of like, neither of us was wanted by the world that we came from.
Yeah.
Both of us were very much like, the fuck are you to the world we came from? Like, they didn't know what to do with us.
You have an interesting bit of rapport with him. You get a sense, and I'm thinking that maybe Verlaine opens up a bit to Harland about this, because Harland's very like, I'm not gonna judge. He's kind of like, I'm too dumb to judge people. I love him, but I don't think Kyle will have an argument with that. But you get, instead of actual like exposition dump from Verlaine, you just get a vibe that Verlaine has not had people, and you know what that feels like. And so a lot of Harland is like, that's his middle name, is Himbo. So
Harland Himbo the Humble.
You get this,
yes,
Harland the Humble Himbo. That needs to be on a t-shirt. But so you get the sense from Verlaine that they haven't had people, and the hunters sort of like also get that vibe. Verlaine's got a little bit of a lost boy vibe. And they kind of like, yeah, you know, you're gonna come out with us on hunts. We're gonna teach you how to be, you know, independent, and you don't need nobody, but we're all here for you. You know, it's like that kind of weird hypocrisy of it.
Yeah. That Beza's
And
also experiencing.
yeah, it's that weird like, you are the most independent person ever, but you still have the brethren of the hunters. Something very formative happens when Verlaine's hanging out with you, Beza. Bless you. He goes out on a few hunts with you. Like, kind of sticks to the back. But Verlaine's, you know, Verlaine's always had that frickin' butterfly switchblade. But this is like, the hunters actually make an effort to, you know, Verlaine's a little scrawny. Definitely gets by more on, you know, wiles than on sheer force. And the hunters and Sir Tuscandale are like, you know, you gotta put some meat on your bones, and like, it's a little grandma, but then also grandma with swords.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's probably some points also where they do a lot of training together.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Verlaine, you know, being all roguey and knife fighting, and Beza being a dex-based fighter.
Oh yeah.
Instead of a strength-based fighter.
You're gonna have a lot of sparring. Like, yeah. a lot of the rangers have that vibe to them. So he gets they get a little bit of training that is more weaponry based. They learn how to, and there's a couple of hunters that are a little bit more stealth based, and so Verlaine gets a little bit of how to hunt around and not be seen as much. Verlaine's very used to not being seen by blending into the crowd in a literal sense, like in a physicality sense, but not so much as how to be less perceivable when you do that. So there's this idea of maybe Verlaine learns a little bit more how to, you know, take advantage of, like, you're looking at basically he goes to the school of Assassin's Creed. How to slip into a crowd and just like walk with them for a while. And so learns a bit more roguish tendencies from some of the hunters, and to the point where, you know, half decent, you know, can, you know, shoot an animal for dinner sometimes when the wind is right. But there is a hunt that Verlaine goes on with you and with a couple of the hunters. It's a big hunt, so it's like all hands on deck. We're all gonna go after this thing, and it's a month. And I've said to you before, Beza, there's some hunting of a vibe to the Overlook Tower, but there's also a lot of hunting of monstrosities, things that are still around or things that are residual from the twisted whims of the Lord of Tales. You're kind of continuing to clean up his mess. And that is something that Her Majesty of the Hunt has always been sort of in charge of, is hunting the sort of, like I said, the monstrosities and the abominations that the Lord of Tales put out into the world. And so you all go on a hunt for a very nasty creature. We're talking huge jowly jaws and like walks on all fours, but its arms it's like kind of like a gorilla monster, but really fast and really, really freaking scary. And you all put up that, you know, valiant fight, and this thing is just vicious. And during that fight, Verlaine gets a little too close to the fray, maybe gets a little too intense, like, well, you know what, fuck it, and just like goes for the thing and just gets completely wiped out. And when the fighting settles, when you all eventually down the creature, Verlaine is found to have been severely injured by this. Basically got clawed in the face. And it's one of those things where, like, healing magic will do a lot, but it won't grow things back. And so, let's say we already talked about the hunters, the Overlook having a very good armory. Someone fashions him a nice leather eye patch, and he's got a little bit of scarring, but he has his eye patch covering up the damage from this creature. And a couple of times he'll try shifting, and even when he shifts, you still see the scarring. He can't really hide himself quite as well as he used to, which is a little bit of a blow. And when that happens, when he's injured, he kind of recovers, and he kind of starts drifting a little bit into the background. Gets a little quieter. Doesn't quite fit. They're sort of just, maybe that was a little too much, a little too much frontline, and not quite what they were looking for. And eventually, Villain just sort of backs off a little bit and tells you, yeah, I'm thinking I'm just gonna kind of see the sights, maybe take a vacation from all the monster hunting. Not really my speed.
All right, it is a lot. I know. If you ever need someone to fight with you, though, I've got your back. I mean, at least half of it. You're a lot taller than me.
I mean, not when you do that thing.
That's true.
But he holds a hand out to you, and you guys do a little, like, whatever the handshake is for the hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And Villain just kind of treks off. And none of you three see them for a while. We're gonna say that's around when Villain hangs out with Harland. And there is let's loop back to Oliet. Oliet, one of the questions that I asked all the other players was, name a different queen, other than the one you're training with, that you would think you might spend some time with. Get to know, learn a little bit from. Let's say it's an elective course you get to take, and you get to learn something from them. Who would you like to have had this sort of encounter with? Whether it's long-term or short-term encounter.
Probably. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Queen of the Folk.
Okay.
Just because she can command attention and command a crowd by charm. It's by just sheer force of personality, which is very interesting to me.
She is, in every way that Oliet has learned to be imposing and like biting and like surgical with the way that you, manipulate people, to be honest. She's sort of the opposite. She's warm and open, and God, if there ever seemed like there was a leader who had nothing to hide, which is completely sleeves up, nothing hidden, what you see is what you get, she is it. And yet still commands so much respect with her people. She puts them first and is very much someone who could impart on you the importance of connection and not losing that.
Yeah.
So we'll say that at some point, Her Majesty of the Word and Her Majesty of the Folk do, and as I said, they interact. They have a little bit of overlap in their domains. They're very, everyone is very fond of Her Majesty of the Folk, at least as far as you know. There's a little bit of tension sometimes with some of the more business-minded, like Her Majesty of the Trade is not like super into her. But Her Majesty of the Word is very, very fond of this other queen. And eventually you end up, whether it's just a little independent study, you are given more freedom as you are, not that you were not free before, but you have less study with Her Majesty of the Word. And so you're able to kind of travel around. Honestly, you probably are sent to go learn more stories. There's, you know, after a while, she knows a lot, but in person is often a great way to learn. And she talks to you about stylistic differences and learning different forms of expression. And yeah, she could show you, but where's the fun in not getting to actually experience them out in the wild, so to speak? So you're sort of sent to go spend a little time with Her Majesty of the Word. And her court is very different than the others. She runs it like a tavern. It's busy and loud, and there's always people. It's almost a little like she's one of them. Her holding court is basically people come to her and they tell her their problems, and she listens, and she's gracious and friendly and is like, you know what, we're gonna fucking fix that. And she figures out how to deal with it. She is the people person. She's just like the quintessential queen of the people. And when you're in her court, yeah, you're basically like at a table of many, and you get to watch her work, and she might even give you the opportunity to like give it a go. And you spend some time, like quite some time there. Let's say like at least a couple weeks, maybe. What seems like weeks. Time really doesn't mean much. In a world where the sky is segmented into all the times of day, doesn't really mean much. But there's a point where you're at the tavern, in the court, and it's kind of a normal night, very busy, lots of activity. There's music playing, there's a big fire going, and you suddenly have someone sit next to you at the table, and you look up, and it's a gaunt sort of fellow, black leather armor, and like sort of a gray charcoal sash over his front, big shock of white hair, gray skin, big leather eye patch. And it's been a little bit, probably, honestly, what probably feels like years. And Villain just sort of gives a wry smile and is just like, fancy meeting a girl like you in a place like this.
Do I know you?
Nah, you know, you might have known this other guy I knew. He was a bit of a pain in the ass.
Maybe.
I'm much more interesting. I got an eye patch.
Are you? I do like a good scar.
Honestly, he flips it up. And you see, like, I won't go into too much detail. He basically got his eye clawed out. And he flips it back.
It's pretty gnarly.
Really hot, right? Yeah.
I mean, yeah. What are you doing here?
You were both at the same exact time. No, but seriously, what are you doing here? Just wandering the world, you know, seeing the sights. Well, half of them. I'm gonna get a lot of mileage out of this eye patch joke.
Yeah, I can tell.
I thought you were hanging out.
I suppose I should feel. Oh, go ahead.
No, this is canon. This is canon. They are interrupting each other, and they are not communicating very well. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say, but I think I'm just Chris to Angela. I think I might be on a slight lag, so that's probably why that keeps happening.
I will take my time then, so that you have time to interject. Which is hard with him being
Sure. Yeah.
I'll do my best.
No, I think I'm just trying to, figure out what makes people tick. Trying to get better at what I'm supposed to be doing.
By slumming it with the rabble. He doesn't seem to believe that. He's just sort of...
I mean, slumming is an ugly word.
So what have you learned so far? What makes all these folks tick?
Well, I've learned that people like a good story, even if it's not true.
Seems sound.
What'd you say?
That seems sound.
People don't hate a pretty face. I've learned that too.
Oh, from experience, believe me.
I've also learned that people are just going to come and go.
Ain't that the truth?
So are you coming or are you going?
Kinda always a little bit of both. But I could leave my foot stuck in the door for a little while.
Where have you been?
Everywhere. I got an eye patch, didn't you see?
Yes, I saw the eye patch. You're exceedingly cool.
Mm-hmm. Nah, I caught up with some folks. You might remember them. Went to some killer parties. Oh my god. Yeah, just kicking rocks a little bit with Her Majesty of the trade. I know there's a lot of them. I realize that now.
What have you learned?
I have learned how to sail a boat. No, not really. I don't know. It's mostly about how to, get a good deal, how to get what you want out of people. I mean, I already knew how to do that. I feel like I've learned a lot more. They take on this sort of really fake, goofy pretentiousness. I don't know, I just really feel like I learned more on the road, just like following where the wind takes me.
Yeah. For sure.
I do actually mean that.
Where's the wind going to take you now?
Good question. That's sort of the deal with the wind. Not quite sure. He's being he's trying to be funny, but obviously it's been a bit and you didn't leave on the best of terms. He's sort of trying to ignore that. Hoping to can we just not do what you're trying to do right now? And you guys get drinks. At least someone brings drinks. They're always bringing drinks. And Valen's just like, this is why I like this place.
Fine. Have it your way. We don't have to talk.
Great. And he reaches out with the glass to clink with yours.
I will finish my drink. I'll just sit there until it's done. Chug all of it. Put it down.
Do you keep eye contact like a power move as you do that? Or do you ignore him as you do that?
I ignore him completely. I allow him to clink my glass, and then I just chug my entire beverage.
Okay. Yeah.
Is this a true to form tavern?
In what way? Like beds and food and stuff? I couldn't hear that time. One more time. Oh, Discord. You are a fickle mistress.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what happened, but sometimes that's
So yeah, what do you mean true to
like,
form tavern?
True to form as in like there's kitchens and rooms and like, or are we more in just like a gathering place in her court?
Well, it is, the court itself is sort of a gathering place, but there are definitely places where that stuff is prepared. Like, let's say that the rooms around this space are those kind of rooms, the kitchen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How busy is this tavern? Is it like super? Are there a lot of people right now? Is it kind of quiet?
Right now, it's not like people are all standing around the tables. It's that packed, but it has been that packed in the past. We'll just say it's like maybe there's like 50, 60 people in here, but it's a big room, so it's more like a busy, kind of like a banquet hall at like a special event kind of thing. Like it's busy, but you can walk around. It's noisy.
Okay, cool. I was just trying to. Yeah, I will order another round, and I will, as the drinks arrive, I'll pick up both drinks and stand up. Do you want to go not talk somewhere else?
Sounds good. He gets up. Has a bag with him.
Of course.
Who knows what knives are in his bag?
Of course.
So yeah, he'll follow you. Where do you
go? To wherever is private and quiet, where we can do all kinds of not talking.
So panning to the fireplace is what I mean.
Basically a fade to black here.
Yeah, sure. You guys wander off. So yeah,
so delighted.
The drama, oh my. So yeah, you trying to think if how long he stays around for.
I was gonna say, I honestly imagine that he or that they, I don't even know if they're there when I wake up, to be honest, and I don't know if I see them for a very long time.
I think they might blow off.
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, that feels right. Painful and correct.
God.
Feels painful but correct.
Welcome to the angst train, everyone.
Oh,
you thought this was gonna be children in fairy tale land. No.
Not for long.
Nope. Not kids anymore.
Big Daddy.
Yeah, seriously.
Business partners. That's a very good emoji. So yeah, we'll let's see. What else is there to talk about? So yeah, so Verlaine, we'll just keep filling in the details a little bit. Verlaine kind of ducks out. The next time you all see them, I think we're just gonna interchange. It's he, they. It's probably just easier. The next time you see them, it's at one of the Queen's moots. Feels a little like one of the last Queen's moots. There's a lot of talk at this one about, what... Thank you. There's a lot of talk about what you have achieved over the course of your training. There's a lot of sort of... It feels a little like a summation of how you have been molded. Some of them use that language. Some of them are giving you a little bit more agency. Specifically, Her Majesty of the Folk. And you do get the sense of what you've each become capable of doing. Beza, you have been trained into this this rune knight, this capable, fierce fighter that is enhanced by these mystical etchings that you can place on yourself, on objects, that give you that sort of edge in battle, or give you different magical effects that will help protect you or help you be, I almost said be all you can be. Wow. But
That's
this
ingrained
idea
in us for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Goa. I'm not proud of that.
You should be. That was amazing.
So, yeah, and you are, the sort of let's do this. Let's talk about let's call it your final exam, your display of what your abilities are and what you have learned how to do. You basically give a little bit of an exhibition. And each person in the party gets a chance to show what they're made of. Show me what you've got. So Beza, what sort of, I assume it's a combat demonstration.
It would have to be.
Mm-hmm. Let's kind of turn this into moments. Let's give you a kick-ass hero moment, like in a montage, the coolest thing that happens during the exhibition for you.
Okay.
I'll set the scene really quick. They all clear out, the thrones are gone. You're in Her Majesty of the Folks. It's now basically a coliseum. Everyone's sitting around, the queens are in the front row, and you and the hunters put on a display. So what does that kind of look like?
Okay, so at this point, I'm assuming we're doing our level 3 stuff. Beza has learned 2 runes that she can inscribe on things, and she's able to use both of them. So I think she just has both of them on her at all times.
Like on her arms or shoulders, or like where she put them?
So she's able to inscribe them on armor, weapons, and shields. She doesn't use a shield.
The Goa have natural armor, so let's just assume it's the bronze and the metal clockwork that is part of your sculpt that you can inscribe with runes.
Yeah, I was kind of picturing it almost like she has one on each palm.
Sure. Yeah. Cool.
Because her hands basically flip out of the way and become her swords. So it's
I love that. Let's say she's got these runes on the palms of her hands. And what sort of things do they do?
So one of them is I don't know how to say these in terms of like Nordic pronunciation. Looks like ISE, the frost rune.
Okay.
It can give her some mental boosts, but if she invokes it, she can also use it to increase my strength score by 2 for 10 minutes.
Shit. Oh shit! All right, that's like a whole point bonus to your to all your strength stuff, including your weapons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very
cool.
I
use finesse weapons, but
yeah,
it still could come in very handy. The thing is too, I don't necessarily have to be the one using the weapon.
You can gift you can give that object to another person, and they can get the benefit of that object.
Exactly.
That's very cool. These are attached to you at the moment, but the fact that you have that option is very, very cool, and does speak a little bit to the camaraderie and collaboration of the huntsman. That if needed, you could inscribe something for the hunt and give it to someone else if they're in a better position to say strike the killing blow or something. It doesn't always have to be just yours. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, and there's certain ones that I can use more easily on other people. There's a bunch of them. I only can learn 2 at a time right now. The other one is Ild, the fire rune.
Okay.
Which lets me where'd it go? So if I hit with an attack, I can invoke the rune to create fire shackles that will restrain a target for 1 minute and deal fire damage at the same time. They do get saving throws, but they it's a strength saving throw.
Strength. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in both cases, I can only invoke these once per short rest, so she has limited uses of them.
Okay.
But I imagine
Still very cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Giant Might that we already discussed. She can grow in size to become large-sized.
I mean, that absolutely is part of the display that she does. Like, no way that's not something that she does as either as the grand finale or as the start of this thing. So let's say, based on those things, let's say that it's a combat encounter with some sort of, and they've been planning this, like proud big brothers and papas, and they're just like, oh, we have to make sure this is really cool for her, and so they go out and get you like the coolest, most gnarly looking monster they can think of, and they trap it and they bring it into the arena, and it's some sort of like, my brain keeps going to like it's some sort of like giant snake monster.
That actually worked well because she's also immune to poison.
So yeah, is that's well, I was gonna say yeah, it's a go thing. Yeah. So yeah, you have this giant serpentine creature that the huntsmen help you with, but you are very much like your point on it. So anything they do, it's at your command, your word. And you basically lead these huntsmen on this combat encounter with this giant snake thing. It's all, it's all like flailing weapons and terrifying moments of like, oh god, it's gonna eat you. And the crowd is very obediently like, oh, kind of.
Yeah. Well, this is a very me move given my past history with characters, but I think that as she's fighting, she uses her 2 runes, definitely. I think at one point she increases her strength so that she can like get one of the coils off of herself or something when it's wrapped around her. She uses the shackles.
It's not without its challenges.
Yeah, she uses the shackles to try to hold the snake in place long enough for herself and the other hunters that are helping her to get it. And then at one point, she, and I think the hunters probably know she's doing it on purpose because they fought with her so much, but she lets herself get eaten.
Oh no!
Yep. And then grows.
And
becomes large-sized in.
Listen, y'all. Content warning, Florida. I'm from Florida, and there are plenty of examples of gators and snakes that eat something way too big for them, and we're just gonna go. That's all I'll say. So yes, you allow yourself to be eaten by a giant snake monster, and you proceed to pop it like a gross balloon. And the queens did not expect it to be a splash zone in the front row. And it's just like...
Except the queen of the hunt. She probably was like...
Her Majesty the Hunt brought a poncho. No. But yeah, so it's this like bloody, violent, but like precise and fierce sort of encounter that you have with this creature, and the crowd goes nuts, and Her Majesty of the Hunt comes forward and grows, and she actually shrinks a little bit, like to an actual giant size. And we talked about the fact that she's not one to do that. She does not make herself smaller for anyone's comfort, but she does it here so that she can reach. And you're big at this point. She's almost your size, pretty much. Like you're about approximately the same size. And she does this so that she can take your hand and put it up, so that everybody can cheer louder. And that is the only time you ever see her reduce her size.
Snake steaks for dinner!
Oh.
And you hear Tuscandale, Excelsior! No, Adventure! I for some reason gave him Excelsior. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, so yeah, you have this incredible feat of martial and hunting prowess as a rune knight. And that is how you show everyone in, again, what feels very much like a final moment of training. You get to show them what you've crafted yourself into.
Mhm.
So, didn't know where you fit, took what you were made for, and decided to do something else with it. You know. And Sir Tuscandale, blubbering drunk hours later, tells you how proud he is. Sloppy, drunk, crying Loxodon, Elephant Knight. I am so proud of you. You're the best squire I've ever had. You're the only one, but you're still the best. And it's a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if Beza necessarily is able to cry, but like that level of emotion I think hits her both when the queen shrinks a little. Like she may not realize it in the moment because of the adrenaline, but later she's like, holy shit, the queen did that.
She brought herself lower to build you up. And that is not something she does. And also,
no. And also with Sir Tuscandale, like being so emotional and proud, especially given how young she was when she came here, they're basically her parents, or at least very strongly the parental figures. So she's like, like she can't cry, I don't think, given the way she was built and created, but like it's probably the closest anyone's ever seen her to that level of like emotional response to something.
Yeah. And you do notice your friends, your comrades in arms, and Valaine's like and they're all sort of also you all have sort of a prominent place in the seating all together as sort of the party being released out into the wild, so to speak.
Beza might have warned you guys beforehand that you should probably be prepared for blood getting flung around during her demonstration. She wouldn't necessarily have known exactly how bad it was going to be, but she probably would have given you a heads up.
Sure. Yep. No one took you seriously, and now they do. So let's go with Paru. What do you think would be an interesting exhibition of what Paru has learned as a druid circle of the spores?
I think she does a couple of different things. I think she starts out with casting a big entanglement across the floor, causing vines and thorns to just kind of work their way across basically the center of the ring.
Ooh.
And she's
Minotaur Mom is proud.
That's one of the reasons that she started with that.
Sure.
And she's kind of like just sitting next to Sniffs as she does it, just kind of calmly doing her thing. She's got her hair.
He's like your hype man, but just with like arms crossed.
Yeah,
he's not doing anything. He's just very intimidating.
She's got she gives him Button to hold on to, so that Button can
your fire weasel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hold Button.
So it's like, but then he looks and he goes,
Well, Button will probably actually end up hanging out on his shoulder just like that, so he can still be like that.
There's some shade with his cap and all.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm sure Button enjoys. And so as she hands him Button, she rapidly shrinks in size and turns into her own fire weasel and begins to weave into the vines that she's created as a little bit of using one of her wild shapes to kind of sneak in and disappear. And then I think she waits for... Is it going to be like a combat thing, or is it just a demonstration of skills?
Doesn't have to be combat. It just made the most sense for Bezos to be combat.
I think that it's more of... For Paru, it's almost more like a stealth kind of, can you get in and out of places?
Okay. It's like
it's
like
weird.
a contortionist act. It's like an acrobatic
Yeah,
act.
an acrobatic act.
Okay.
But at some point, like there's something she has to find or something in the maze. So she goes and she
I need a volunteer.
She uses her augury ability to find it. So she cuts her hair, she finds it, and I think when she does, she uses the shifting out of her wild shape to actually use her circle of spores symbiotic entity ability to suddenly shoot up this like I want to say that hers are going to be like ghost fungi almost, so that they're the bioluminescent greenish purple spores that just kind of infuse up through the holes in the vining as she appears with her shillelagh in hand, and like just the spores kind of coming off of her and just kind of settling as I found it, and then also her look.
Kick ass. I adore the idea that she glows. I might even say that when she goes into her symbiotic form, she will probably give off a dull glow if that is the kind of spore you want to, or the kind of fungi you want to turn into.
Absolutely. And she might actually kind of blow some at Villain because it's a little psychedelic, but not enough to like actually like get him high, but just like
he's just like I see you. I see you.
And sends him a wink, and then goes back to sitting by Sniffs and kind of gives herself a little bobble.
Sure. Yeah, and the crowd just eats it up. You're incredibly charming, and the symbiote thing. Like, let me tell you, there are myconids in the back row, and they're just like, like super duper excited. So yeah, they even like help out a little bit. Like there's some spores that they
just like go up in the air.
There's like a glow, but there's like a glow around the arena during some of this.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Let's think up what sort of. I mean, I can guess what it might take the form of, but what sort of exhibition or what sort of display do you think she would do? Again, these were big theatrical ones, but that is not. That was not a requirement of this. When you were originally told this was a thing you needed to do, it was expressed that it's just whatever quintessentially represents what you can do.
Oof. No
pressure.
Right.
You just need to show like the essence of who you've become as a person. That's all.
Yeah, no problem. I think that initially, I really think that she had intended to go at it a little bit more pragmatically, but
okay. Oh no!
I can't.
You went third, and you're like, oh god.
I can't in front of everyone be the boring one. So
you can't approach this like a book report, which was
not anymore. So I think that she goes out into the center, like where the demonstration is being held, and will set down these bongos that she has acquired.
Okay.
As her kind of
super excited
bardic favorite tool of the trade. And she will conjure her mage hand to start playing these bongo drums for her.
Okay. I love it.
And as the bongo drums play, I mean, the mage hand's big enough to like just be able to kind of tap on it. As these mage hands, or as the mage hand begins to play, she will start to tell her own version of the dragon story.
Okay. Very cool.
She, I think, in telling this tale, definitely spins it a little more. She's trying to top the story that she's been told. And there has to have been more than one dragon. And certainly one of these dragons was as fabulous as she is. So she tells a larger tale.
That's why they're archetypes. That's why those stories are not about a specific thing. They're about an archetype of a person. Any story you tell will probably capture the essence of something.
Yeah. Tells this story, is careful to watch Elaine's face and the Queen of the Word. Those are the two faces
Sure.
she keeps checking in on as she's performing. I don't think she has any doubt that her friends support her. I don't think she has any doubt at this point that her fan club is going to adore whatever she does.
Oh my god, they're like, she's so good. Oh my god.
Right. But those are the two people that she
Sure.
is still afraid she might not impress. As she nears the end of this tale, I think that she will what is the other one that she can do? Pyrotechnics. I think she nears the end of this tale, and as the tale is almost over, she will use the pyrotechnics to conjure all this like black smoke around the arena that almost completely obscures her. And then using her last ability to do so, will cast it again, but then cause this enormous firework to shoot up into the sky as she breathes fire directly up in that direction. Just this big, grandiose display. As the firework, however, goes off, the smoke will clear, obviously, because they're the same spell. And the bongo drums have ceased to play. And she will just be standing there looking exceedingly full of herself.
Crowd goes fucking wild. And as you're paying attention, Her Majesty of the Word has a very pleased little smile on her face. She's usually very stony, so that's a big deal. And she is the first to stand in ovation. Everybody stands.
Oh my gosh.
And you see Villain just kind of back in his seat. And he's like, all right, that was pretty fucking cool.
I will curtsy very dramatically, but make sure to like fluff my tutu in their direction just a little bit, like, remember this? And then I'll head back to my spot. Yeah.
And again, Kyle and I, we will do a thing. We'll do a little tiny, like, The Adventures of Harland at the beginning of next week's episode. It'll be very good. Yep. He's Nuktuk. It's great. So Villain's turn comes up. And trying to get a sense of, he does an exhibition, but it's with that very like whatever sort of, I mean, just never got rid of that at all. And let me get it. So a hush falls over the arena, and he stands in the middle of it, all clad in dark. And he reaches out with his hand. He pulls out a knife. Doesn't look, it's not the switchblade. It's dark and obsidian, and it's carved sort of flat on one side, curved on the other to a point, and kind of flips it in his hand a couple of times. And from a couple of different corners in the room on the arena, like kind of similar to what Beza was doing, a bunch of figures start rushing in, like they look like sellswords or something. And what Villain ends up doing over the next few minutes is a mix between I don't know why this got into my head. A mix between the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular and just fucking murder. So, a couple of things that happen. This arena has a few obstacles or a few, let's call them obstructions. That was the word I was looking for. Things you can hide behind, things you can move around. And as these cell swords are running around trying to get to Verlaine, he's doing a mix of shifting between some of them. It's like watching someone play Among Us. It's like watching someone shift into a person, sneak behind them, and just take them out. And it's weirdly like they're kind of monstrous, but they're like people, which is weird that's sort of what the display is. But it seems like Her Majesty of the Trade is trying to get people to be like, no, guys, it's part of the show, it's fine. Trying to like calm people down when there's an initial like, oh god. And so he goes around and like starts a mix between disabling and what seems like straight up killing people, with a lot of he just like almost turns into shadow. It's like he literally becomes like let me clarify. Not literally becomes shadow, but you lose track of him several times. He slips into a shadowy corner, and how the hell did he end up over there? It's a very impressive, very kind of terrifying thing that they have apparently developed. Beza, you see several like hand-to-hand encounters that he gets in with some of them, and you see kind of the footwork that you worked on together. Paru, he has just a couple of times. You watch him do some of the you see him do some of the shifting, and he's gotten a lot better at it. It's like walk behind a wall for a moment and he's someone else, entirely new, completely new outfit. Like it like the illusion is very impressive. Almost makes you wonder if there's more than just the changeling going on, especially with the armor changing. But every time he changes, you do like initially they pull the eye patch off. Every time he changes, though, you do see whichever guard, you can tell whichever guard has that telltale scar across the eye, you know that's not the real person. It's a little heartbreaking to see that. Like there is one little, just that little thing different which kind of breaks the illusion. But they seem to make up for it in a lot of other ways. At one point, eventually everyone kind of gets into it because these cell swords are very much playing the heel. They seem like they're maybe like just kind of threatening the crowd a little bit. They're playing it up like it's a show. And eventually one almost like the last person, he's sort of snuck around and taken out. And then some of them are like kind of being drug off. Some of them are limping off the scene. And the last person standing, this big, hefty guy with like brass and leather armor, gets snuck up on by Verlaine. And he digs that black knife like right up under the back of the guy, and as the guy falls to the ground, Verlaine holds a hand up, and you see coming from the wound, coming from this guy, a little flicker of light, just a little silver flash of light from the wound into Verlaine's hand. And he opens his hand, and there's a silver coin and he starts putting it through their fingers, like rolling it. And he hold on. And then he breaks the coin, like cracks it in half, and a spirit appears over the body of the guy, the dead sellsword. Looks exactly like the sellsword, and he's just floating there. And Verlaine says something to it you don't hear, and the ghost speaks back and then disappears. And Verlaine just looks to the crowd, gives a little bit of a there sort of bow, and walks off. And there's a smattering, and then it gets louder when Her Majesty of the Trade is clearly like, y'all better fucking clap, sort of tone from her.
I'm trying so hard not to look impressed. But they're so hot, I can't stand it.
Yeah. Starts, you see as they're getting back, they start affixing the eye patch back on. And they slip in and sit down on the bench. We can determine where. I assumed that Oliette and him were not next to each other on the bench initially.
I mean, no, but I mean, this seat isn't taken, so if they wanted to sit next to me, they would be so allowed.
Amazing.
Yeah, sure. Kind of slips
I was gonna say you can roll for it if you can't decide.
Well, actually, you know what? They sit on the other side where you started, and the lights go down in the audience, and the thrones are back, and the queens are all sitting there. You like blinked, and they're there. And in the dark, you feel someone walk behind you, and Verlaine sits next to you on the bench. So, as you are all seated, and Harland also gets his turn. I totally forgot. Harland also gets his turn. It's going to be amazing, and Kyle and I are going to talk about it.
And we all go crazy because we
all go
Harland.
crazy, or possibly scream in terror. I don't know what'll happen.
It's gonna be
I don't
full
even
of
think
screaming
Kyle
women.
will know what happens. Yeah.
Fair.
Oh,
So screaming people.
the harlots are in full force.
Let us ally our kingdoms, Harland.
Like high pitch. It's like a Beatles concert.
Oh man. They're crying.
The amount of estrogen in that room.
Someone cries and faints. It's a mix between a Beatles concert and that guy from Avatar: The Airbender who foams at the mouth.
On the Isle of Kyoshi every time.
So it's that. So as the lights on the thrones go up, you hear the Queen of the Word comes up. She steps forward again, and with a motion of her hands, the pedestal rises from the center of the throne room, and she begins to orate a version of the Lord of the King of Tales, the Lord of Tales story. It's similar. There's some version. There's some details that are a little bit more, a little bit less. But we will get to that in a moment. Oliette, are you paying attention to Her Majesty of the Word, or is like Verlaine sitting there distracting?
How many times have I heard this story?
You have learned that you can always tease something more out every time she tells it. But you are very well versed in what she's talking about.
She very much wants to have her cake and eat it too. I think I will say though that
Maybe occasionally just glancing over at him.
Yeah, I think that she, because again, I can't look that eager. Hello, like you're welcome for even letting you sit here.
Oh, I
But
don't
I
know.
do think that she is definitely keyed into how their body language and how close they are, and I would argue that she's probably distracted at several different points from the story, but trying
Okay.
to pay attention.
So in at least a couple of the moments that you get distracted, um, you notice that the lane is a little distracted themselves. Uh, they are sort of fidgeting with their hands. The knife is there. They're fidgeting a little bit and they're kind of staring down at like the chair in front of them or the whatever the wall. So you have like a barrier or something. Um, and they're just like their brows furrowed. They're just kind of like chewing on a lip, not really paying attention to the story that's being told. And yeah, there's just like a very it's hard to read, but it's a very dark expression on Valaine's face. Can't really see super well because you only see half of it. But they're just kind of in their own. They're just kind of like in their own headspace as the story continues, and Her Majesty the Word talks about the and this is sort of a follow-up to what you've talked to her about in the past, the idea of the Lord of Tales remade this world many times over uh, in the image that best suited his insatiable whims, that some of the queens come from those worlds that are lost forever. He took a queen, he remade the world. He took another queen, he remade the world. And they were adrift. They were queens without their homes, and they decided to make one new for themselves. And they gathered and planned and amassed their followers, those loyal to them, and they struck out against the king. And he fell after a great many years of war. And they took it upon themselves to make a better world. For why wouldn't you make a better world if you could control every variable? And so it's a different tone than some of the other stories. It's almost a bit for the Queen of the Word, it's a little more revealing than you were expecting. Usually it's very this is etched in stone and 'twas the way it was sort of thing, and there's a couple more details in this version that kind of give you a glimpse of what they were going through. That bit about being queens taken from lost versions of this story, that's new. That's a new detail for you. Or at least it being incorporated into the story is new. And you get the sense that this version of the story is meant to impart on you a little bit more than before the stakes for these 6 women and why they don't want him to come back. It's almost an entreating you all. Like, this is why we want you to do this. Because we lost everything and built up something from nothing. From less than nothing. He actively wanted to just burn everything whenever it didn't suit him. And it ends on this tone of, Our work is not yet done. We thought it was. We've lived in prosperity for many, many years, and yet it seems he still roams, and it is not, our work is not done. And yet we have been given this opportunity to bring new stories into this place. And she looks to the five of you. Stories he has no control of, stories he did not conceive of and could not have thought of. And perhaps that's what is needed. And there's a little bit of a, you all looking at each other like, okay, so we're doing this. Villain's still kind of in his own headspace. Kind of, when there's a bit of clapping, he kind of blinks and starts clapping.
I feel like at some point I would have nudged them and just been like,
yeah.
I feel like you, the old me would have told you to take notes or something. What's going on with you?
Just tired. Took it out of me.
I'll just leave it alone.
You nudge him and they put the knife away. I just start kind of fiddling with their hands a little bit. And occasionally they're interacting, they're like looking around, and there might be some like goofing off with you all on the bench. And that sort of thing. But it's just a weird vibe on him right now. So the event sort of starts to wrap with that telling of the story. That's sort of how it always ends, is this sort of retreading of why we are all gathered here and what work that is left undone. What is that work? And so you were all brought forth to be presented to the group, the people. And the queens all take turns. They've done it before. Basically setting down the intention of training you all, why they did it. And I will give that speech next week because it'll make sense to have Harland there as well. And when you are all sort of left to your own devices, things start like crowding out. The Queen's moot ends. Near the end, there's a feast at the end, of course, because there's always a feast. Why would you all not get together and then just like drink and eat and party?
Snake steaks.
Snake steaks, right?
I don't know. I don't eat them, but I've heard they're tasty.
Have you ever tried?
No, why would I want to masticate anything? That's weird.
Oh.
Why would we?
Harlan's like, well, that's just not. You guys don't do that in Black Company. I'm just channeling Kyle as best I can. I'm sure he would have made that joke.
That feels genuine.
That does absolutely feel genuine.
Of course, that's the best Harlan impression I have.
So good.
You all kind of get put in this like place of honor. You're on like a big dais with all the queens, and there's this feasting going on. And yes, on the dais. And yeah, so you're sort of all left to muse about what lies ahead, because it seems, at least based on the tone of this Queen's moot, that you're getting close to the 11th hour here. They're probably going to try to send you back soon, Brings up the question of how many of you actually are looking forward to it at this point. You've built lives here, you have purpose here, some of you. What is there left to go back to? And you all sit there, and Olia, you are kind of keyed in on Verlaine after all that weirdness. And at the feast, they seem like they're maybe in slightly better spirits. Food probably helps. They did seem tired. That was a lot of murder for one day. Some people are just like very impressed, and like they come to, like, people come to talk to you and like want to know how you did what you did, and just like half of them just are basically reenacting what you did. You know how like when fans meet people, they're really like hero worshiping. They just basically tell you what they already know, and you get to experience that a little bit. And Beza, people want you to like draw runes on them, like instead of signing things. They're like, you just like rune me.
I feel like she probably, with the help of Sir Tuscandale and the Queen, developed like her own rune to act as a signature.
Oh my god.
Especially
yes,
when she couldn't
please.
write and couldn't read, because
Oh yes,
that way it's like a drawing.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. I love that. We'll talk about what that looks like, at least in general terms.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Paru, you have all your mushroom posse. They're like fist bumping you, like occasionally
she's like animatedly talking with her hands, but nothing is coming out of her mouth. She's like full conversations, no speaking.
Occasionally there's like just a cloud around you all.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Pigpen from Charlie Brown.
Just constant spore.
Oliette, you have your gaggle of devotees. Lots of chattering, lots of compliments, lots of the same stuff that you hear from them all the time. It's very yes man. And
I'm picturing the people from Fifth Element that are following Ruby Rod around.
Yeah, like yes.
That entire interaction. What color green? Oh, like any color green you want. Every color green. Oh my god, it's amazing.
Mixed with like that scene in Mean Girls where she's suddenly head of the plastics. And they're just like, wait, what do you mean? What do we do? We're going with you. That sort of thing. And Verlaine gets approached by Her Majesty of the Trade, and she sort of leans over the table at him and is having a conversation with him, sort of quiet. And he's just kind of nodding, and she puts a hand on his face and pats it. Is like, you did good. Scruffs his hair a little and he straightens it out. And Oliette, you see that he actually has another coin that he's putting in their fingers. And he's just kind of hanging out. He's drinking, eating. Occasionally, someone wanders up, and he sort of obliges them. But all the while, it's just flipping with this coin.
I think I will approach just once during these festivities, and
sure, no one's bothering him right now. He's just kind of off to the side, quiet, doing that thing he always does, blending in the background.
Yeah. And I think that although there is still a part of her that is very keen and very much wants to impress them, I think finally that nervousness, that fear is gone from her. Mm-hmm. And I just approach and look them square in the eye and say, "What's wrong with you?"
Hi to you too.
Haha, blah, 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 blah.
What do you mean?
Something's off. Something's, I don't know, you're acting more you than normal.
I'm afraid it's chronic. Possibly fatal. It's a big party. I don't really dig the noise. It's just kind of gotta perform for them like you're some sort of circus act. I don't know. It feels weird. They're just putting us on a stage because we're gonna be. I mean, what do they want us to do? Defeat some evil king? Don't you just want to go home?
I don't know. What if they don't remember us there? You know, like, what if the people that we cared about are gone? It's not so bad here.
A giant squirrel person walks by.
It's a little weird, but it's not so bad.
Yeah. I don't know. Not being remembered seems like you start fresh, right? Start over. None of that reacclimation garbage. Hey, if no one remembers you, are you still in state custody?
Okay, I mean, I have never been able to twist your arm.
Except for that one time.
But you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, you have agency, but I don't know. I'll never forget you.
His face flickers a little bit at that. Just a little, like the smarm got smacked off for a second.
I think I just kind of reach out and give their cheek a little bit of a stroke and then a slap, and I'll wink and walk away.
How hard of a slap? Like just
Not
a
that
tap.
hard.
Like a...
Yeah, not that hard. Just enough that it stings for a
My
couple
brain
of seconds.
was going smack.
No.
Like, what did I do? What did I do?
No. Just want you to remember it for the next few seconds.
Sure. Yeah. Any just watch as you leave. You know he does, because like
my
you're
fans.
used to being.
I mean, hello. But yeah.
Give me a perception check.
Ooh,
I know it's suddenly a roll. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was like, oh, where are my dice? I have them right here. Ooh, okay. Perception. 15.
15. As you walk away, I mean, there's a lot of noise. The gaggle is kind of paying attention. No. But as you walk away, just like in the vaguest back of your mind, you think you hear Villain, like, muttering a little bit. And you hear just like, shut up. I think maybe you left.
Wait,
just
what did I hear? I'm so sorry.
You heard him. You heard Villain just go, shut up. And you think maybe you left it with just the right amount of regret.
Every mean girl's dream.
Uh-huh.
All right. But yeah, I'll go and then return to like where Paru and Harland and Beza are standing and just hang out.
Yeah, you spend the rest of the evening being hailed as the new potential heroes of this realm of the Queendom. You get a little you get a little high on the hype, just a little. But there is a looming sense of dread that
Paru is definitely feeling that. She does not want to go.
Sniffs is close the whole time, but by close, it's like just like a wall on one side of you at all times.
She's probably leaning against him as much as physically possible. I mean, they've been inseparable since they met, so the idea that...
You're like Han and Chewie, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, you, there's a little, it's a little bit of like it's like graduating. It's like that kind of vibe. Like people are really excited and very proud of you, but there's just this kind of somberness to it too, because this was like an entire formative era of your lives.
Or your entire life.
Or your entire life, in Beza's case. And it just kind of feels like it's building to something, but it's going to be very different. And you're not sure what it is. You're not sure how you feel about it, some of you. But there is the tiny sliver of at least you're all doing it together. And that's where we'll leave off for the week. And we'll see what becomes of, let's say, your graduation. Next week with Chapter 8 of Book of Fables.
Pomp and Circumstance?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
All right, you got it.
Yep, that's absolutely what the title is. Pomp and Circumstance.
I'll make a note.
You know, half the time I name them, and then half the time the name dictates what the session is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, that is our show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Shenanigoons Book of Fables. We hope you have enjoyed our daring tale of... It's gonna get weirder and funnier, I promise. But in the meantime, let's all be sad. I hope you all enjoyed. I certainly am enjoying every single week I get to spend with these fine folks. The characters are a joy. I love making you all very confused in different ways about Villain. And yeah, I'm so happy that we get to tell this story together every week. So I am super looking forward to next week. Hopefully Kyle couldn't be with us today. He was a little under the weather, so feel better soon, Kyle. And we will see you all next week. Please remember, you can find out more about us at nerdsmith.org. That is our home network. And you can also please check out our sponsors. Thank you so much to Eldritch Foundry, Die Hard Dice, and World Anvil for their continued friendship and support of our show and the network as a whole. And to you all for being so amazing. We love having you all with us on this little story we're telling. Please tell your friends, come back next week. We will start incorporating a little bit of nonsense that you get to participate in. So everyone, please have a safe rest of your week and the rest of your evening, depending on the time zone you're in. Stay safe, make good choices. We love you very much. And please do me a favor and be good to each other. All right. Good night, everybody.